Okay, so let's wrap this up with a discussion about what's called neoclassical theory, or this is sometimes called neoliberal theory, or sometimes it's just really honestly not called anything because it's such the mainstream approach. Like if you go to the United Nations, you go to the White House, Republican or Democrat, you go to Europe, you go really anywhere in the West or really in the global institutions, this is really the only theory they're talking about. All those other theories, those are like historical things, and this is like saying this is the one that we do today. This is the only way. Um, we'll have to talk about that here in a second. But what it basically says is this: is that if you want to know whether a state is or a society is developed or not, it's about the type of political and or economic institutions. And really that wraps up into a couple things. Political, it means democracy. Economic, it means capitalism. And so the idea goes that if you're not a capitalist country, especially, and then secondarily, if you're not a democracy, you're going to have a hard time developing. But if you have those things, development's coming your way. So therefore, everyone should be this way. So the best type, obviously, then, according to this theory, is a free market economy. And then if that's working out okay, you can throw democracy in the mix. But if you have to choose between those two things, free market wins, not democracy. But ideally, both. It really bases its argument on this idea that markets are efficient. And so the private sector should be the thing in charge, like the invisible hand of the market and all that kind of stuff. And that's the way this should go. So what we're talking about how does that work in a country that isn't very well developed? Well, one of the things that this theory argues is you need to be able to attract money coming in. So think about if you're trying to start a small business. Before you ever make your first dollar on your small business, think of all the costs that go into that. You have to buy a place for your business to be or rent a place. You have to get the licenses. You have to get all the equipment. You have to hire workers. You have to do all this stuff before you ever see your first dollar, which means to open a small business, you need money. But you're opening the business to get money in the first place, which means you need money coming from outside to start it. This theory works the same way, is you have to attract foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment just means money coming from outside the country into the country from somewhere. So this is going to be like, for example, it could be multinational corporations building factories there. It could be people from outside or groups from outside of the country who are investing their money in there. And so the question comes down to this. If you had $1 million, where would you invest your $1 million? If you had $1 billion, where would you invest it? And the whole idea of neoclassical theory is you want to make your country a good investment opportunity for the people with money out there, which essentially means converting your economy to a free market economy. If the government stays out of things, then donors from around the world are more likely to invest in you. Multinational corporations are more likely to invest in you. So foreign direct investment becomes sort of the key to the whole thing. All these countries, all these societies competing to get money from outside to come into their country. And the argument for the neoclassical theory is that free markets are the most efficient way to do that. The other side of this is that you have to minimize government intervention. If I think the government's going to intervene in the economy, is my money safe in there? Probably not. So I'm not going to invest in that country. So if we minimize government intervention, then more people are going to be willing to invest from outside. Public officials are often seen as acting self-interestedly, and corruption becomes a thing. So we have to get rid of corruption. That's the idea here. As you minimize government intervention, then government officials aren't going to be able to benefit from the whole thing anymore. Some governments is still needed to fix some key market problems. Like, for example, education needs to be promoted, infrastructure needs to be built. So there is still a role for government, but it's a very reduced role for government. Now, obviously, this is us living in the West. We get this system. This is our system to a T. The argument goes, though, that all those countries around the world that are not developed, this is really the only way to achieve that. All right, that's it for today. We're going to, by the way, throughout the next, few years, we're going to kind of mess with this a little bit and try to figure this out. But this particular theory, but this is the dominant theory. This is the one that is going to be everywhere in the news, all that, almost to the point that it's not really even questioned anymore. Okay, that's it for today. Go do your reflection. Other than that, congrats on finishing week 2.